Welcome to the American Revolution. I am your friendly colonial tour guide, and here we go. Now, in order to have a war, we have to have somewhere to be. So, the motivations for colonization were profit, obviously religious freedom, and they wanted to increase the land owned by Britain. The 13 original colonies were New York, Delaware, Georgia, Virginia, Maryland, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Massachusetts, South Carolina, North Carolina, and Rhode Island. Some differences are that the Puritans found the northern colonies, Quakers began to populate the middle colonies, and religion was not studied in the southern colonies. The Navigation Acts of 1651. They aimed primarily at the Dutch, required all trade. French and Indian War and English debt. North American conflict in larger imperial war between Great Britain and France, known as the 7 Years' War. The British won the war, but the cost of the war had greatly enlarged Britain's debt. King George III, 1738 to 1820. He led the British victory in the 7 Years' War, led England's resistance to France, responsible for taxes on colonists, obviously, lost the Revolutionary War, and went a bit bonkers afterwards. The Proclamation of 1763. This proclamation closed colonial expansion westward and was the first measure to affect all colonies. This proclamation angered the colonists because it prohibited colonial settlement west of the Appalachian Mountain Range. The Sugar Act. It taxed goods such as sugar, wine, coffee, pimento, cambric, and printed cacao. Unfair and high taxation. The Stamp Act imposed tax on all paper documents in the colonies. Colonists argued that only their own representative assemblies could tax them. This resulted in mob violence, and stamp collectors resigned. The Sons of Liberty. It was a secret society. Formed to protect the rights of the colonists, fought taxation, battled the Stamp Act. No taxation without representation. The Boston Massacre. On March 5, 1770, a mob of American colonists gathers at the Customs House in Boston, begins taunting the British soldiers with rocks, snowballs, and sticks. It was a bloody mess. The Tea Act, 1773. British government granted the East India Trading Company a monopoly on the importation and sale of tea in the colonies. The Boston Tea Party. Now their knickers were really in a bunch. The Sons of Liberty held the Boston Tea Party. They protested against the tea tax. The result was that the king lowered the tea tax. Common Sense by Thomas Paine wanted people to think about what was happening and how people must fight against the unfair and unjust ways of King George III and British Parliament. Advocated for independence from Great Britain. Enlightenment thinkers that influenced the American Revolution. John Locke, Voltaire, Rousseau, Thomas Paine, Adam Smith influenced the ideas behind the subsequent government created once by the Americans who won the Revolution. The Declaration of Independence. Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. The colonists were declaring their independence from Britain. The parts were the preamble, charger against the king and Parliament. The Revolutionary War. For us, the colonists. Colonists had a home field advantage, leadership under Washington, and volunteered militia. Continental Army was led by George Washington himself. Loyalists were the colonists that supported the British. The colonists and the British signed the Treaty of Paris. Finally, the colonists won the war in 1783. The war started in 1765 and ended in 1783. The Revolutionary War for the British. The British had the advantage of having the largest military in the world and also hired the Hessians, were led by General William Howe. The election of Washington. Washington was elected on April 30th, 1789. He was elected because he helped frame the Constitution and was a commander in the army. The Treaty of Paris. It negotiated between the US and Great Britain, ended the Revolutionary War, and recognized American independence. Articles of Confederation established the functions of the national government of the United States after it declared independence, too weak to be effective in central government. The Constitution and why it was adopted. The Constitution was adopted because it was stronger than the AOC. And that is all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed this journey through the American Revolution.